Good afternoon, collectors and friends. Thank you so much for tuning in to Trading Card Therapy, episode number 66. I'm your host, the Doctor, Leighton Sheldon. Lot of things going on in the hobby. The National is just a few months away. Today's episode, we are going to talk about what your expectations are in the hobby. So where I'd like to start is I've been listening to content, in the hobby for quite some time. And I've recently heard, this cycle of content that is focusing on, modern wax boxes and not only the pricing, but the quote unquote return on investment, meaning like when you open the box. I heard someone specifically say, recently, hey, I was opening a box, maybe it was with their son, and, I spent $150 or so, and, I opened the box and it was pure garbage. And I'm listening to the content intently. I respect this individual. And I'm waiting for maybe damaged cards came out. Ultimately, it just seemed as though he was unhappy with the contents, meaning, the numbered card was garbage, the autograph was no good. And it really had me thinking about expectations. So I was curious, for those who are watching this episode of Trading Card Therapy, what are your expectations of a box of cards when you open it, either by yourself, with your son or daughter, with your friends? The reason why I'm putting it like this is because, make no mistake, I have a 9-year-old son. His name is Crosby. By the way, he just made his first ever appearance at Fenway Park. We went last weekend. I took him to a ball game last Sunday against the Brewers, and it was a fantastic time. Lots more on that in the future, but getting back to center. So I'm listening to all this different talk across multiple, I don't even know that they're content creators, but just people who are in the hobby, talk about boxes being just terrible and a bad deal. And I really think I wanted to take a step back and talk about, what were your expectations when you opened the box? So in other words, we'll use Topps in this case. Topps produces a box of cards. They sell for $150, give or take, whatever the case is. And as part of this experience, let's just say you have a son like myself. I have a 9-year-old, and I'm going to open the box with him. Well, to be clear, no one's forced me to buy the box. There are cheaper options available. So in other words, if I don't want to open up a $150 box, I can open up maybe a $20 blaster box. Maybe it doesn't have as many packs, doesn't have as big of a chase, all that kind of fun stuff that's hobby related. If you're in the know, you understand about, hobby odds and retail odds and all that kind of fun stuff. But once again, I go back to expectations. I was a little bit confused and still am, because if you go into it in the right way, with the right frame of mind, it's an experience that you get to either have yourself or you get to share with your son, your daughter, your friends. And if you want to control how much that experience costs, in other words, if you don't want to buy a steak for dinner tonight, that's going to be $50, you could buy a hamburger that might cost $10. They both will feed you. Presumably, they both have protein. And yet, the next day, you'll still have to eat. So my point is, it's really important to consider the experience that you want to have and the budget that you have to make that experience happen. This person or that person's disappointment with opening up a box of cards, sports cards, and not being happy with the return, I find myself confused, because I'd like to know what their expectations were or are. Is it to make sure that they get all their money back? That's really tough for a manufacturer to guarantee. And we all know that as part of the experience, you do get that upside of maybe that chance of hitting that one of one or that elusive insert or autograph. But if you got a garbage autograph, someone else presumably will eventually get a good autograph. Once again, talking about expectations. I think it's important to have the right ones. And I really am miffed, and I don't quite grasp what the expectations are of an individual opening up a box of cards to the tune of a few $100 and them getting cards that they're not happy with. Because we all know in the hobby, if you want a certain card and you want to do it the most probably cost-effective way, it's to buy that individual card. And make no mistake, I'm a co-owner of a breaking company called Vintage Breaks. I certainly understand the thrill in breaking and why some people participate and some people don't. So my advice would be, if you're someone out there who has a very limited budget and you are going to be just really, you're going to have sour grapes, you're going to be disappointed after having a hobby experience of opening up a box of cards for a few $100s because you didn't get a big hit, you didn't get the cards you wanted, my advice is to buy the cards that you just want, or buy the card that you just want. I was confused, but I'm getting it now. People were disappointed with the breaks and the way that the cards came out, but yet if they got a big hit, they wouldn't have been as disappointed. Actually, they might have been flipped and they would have been really happy. Maybe we should be in a spot that we're going to be in happy no matter what. So if the $150 or $200 box or whatever the cost is too much, maybe look for a cheaper box. And if that's too much, maybe just focus on singles. I mean, check out my cards. It's not sponsored this video or is in any way, shape, or form affiliated with Trading Card Therapy. But you could buy cards on there for 10 cents. And you can do that by yourself. You can do that with your loved ones. You can do that with friends. And you never even have to have the card shipped to you if you don't want. So I then heard some of these individuals and some of this type of rhetoric say, hey, and on top of having sour grapes about that particular box or a couple boxes of cards, they're like, what's the point of opening these boxes anyway? All the breakers get the hits anyway, or the breakers get all the hits. Well, of course, that's simply not true. But if you looked at just the mathematics of it, not counting Vintage Breaks, but folks like Blez and Filth Bomb, they're doing like 100 case breaks of Bowman Baseball 2024. We're not doing that here at Vintage Breaks, although we do break 2024 Bowman in addition to some vintage stuff. And it got me thinking that, there are some people out there who have this mentality that they don't think about the amount of cases, the amount of time, the amount of effort, energy, etc., that go into yielding, whether it be multiple one-of-ones, multiple hits, super fractors. Take your pick of the type of card that you're looking for. I think it's really important that if you do the hobby by yourself, to have the right expectations. And certainly if you bring, your son or your sons or your daughters, other family members into it, cousins, that you set the expectations properly for all of them. Because if you're opening up a box of cards, hoping that every box is going to yield you back more money than you put into it, we just simply know that's not true. And if the flip side is, well, I'm really not looking to get my money back, but I just want to get $20 out of my $150 or whatever the case is. Listen, I don't open a lot of modern products. I'm not the person to ask. But I do understand managing expectations, both at a personal level and a business level. And I think it's important in the hobby to just take a step back, take a deep breath, and make sure you appreciate the hobby for what it is. And what it is a tremendous form of entertainment and enjoyment to be had by tens of millions of people across the world. Some of those people are going to buy boxes that cost a few $100s. Some of those people are going to buy boxes that cost a few $1,000s. Like, what's Flawless Basketball going to cost, even with no Wemby autographs? I don't know. It's going to probably be a lot. You don't have to buy into those breaks or any of that craziness. And you could choose to just collect single cards or autographs or write players through the mail or collect old hobby periodicals, which is my recent kick. Doesn't cost a lot of money, but it's a lot of fun. So I started off the video today and this episode with this topic because I feel as though there's this unwarranted, folks are saying that a card company or this break has done me wrong. And we all have the ability to pick and choose the ways that we participate in the hobby. So make sure your expectations are reasonable for what you're looking to accomplish. and the ways that you're looking to participate in the hobby. I think it's important. I wanted to show off a card today. It's a special one. It's a 1966 Topps Mickey Mantle PSA 9. Very well centered, sharp corners. And the reason why I'm showing this off to you today is it's a card that I acquired within the last year. And I was just starting to put together some cards for the National for a service by the name of MBA, Mike Baker Authenticated. And Mike, if you're watching, I'm putting together an order for you. I've never submitted any cards to Mike's service, but what the service is, it evaluates already graded cards, and you're really looking for like that MBA, I guess, certification that it's a high-end example for the grade. So I guess PWCC used to do something similar. This card's got really razor-sharp corners, nice, strong centering, great focus, and to me, just seems like a high-end 9. I think a regular 9 of this is about $15,000 or $18,000, maybe $20,000. And so before I try to retail it, I am going to take this card along with several others over to MBA Authenticated at the National and see what their thoughts are on it. I'm curious, for those of you that are out there, have any of you submitted cards to MBA Authenticated? Or have you been a collector of like the PWCC super high-end eye appeal for the grade type cards? You know, I myself just collect cards I think that it look nice for the grade, but I also recognize that the hobby is forever continuing to mature and to change. And so one of the things I believe I'm seeing happening more is good, solid cards that are, of course, valuable nonetheless, meaning in PSA 9, this card still would be good money. But if it's high-end for the grade, I think that this is going to continue to happen more and more, where a third party, meaning not PSA, like an MBA or like a PWCC, which is an auction house, is going to put some sort of sticker or certification that it's high-end for the grade. And even though I've never done it, I have put down on some cards I've listed on eBay that this particular card is well-centered or, you know, high-end for the grade. And sometimes the price, it sells for more. It makes a difference. So I'm curious, for those out there tuned in to this particular episode, if you've done this, have you noticed that it was worth the investment? Or did you maybe lose a few dollars and you at least got something out of the experience? Would love to know your thoughts on submitting cards that are already graded to a third-party authenticator like MBA and getting, you know, like high-end eye appeal for that particular grade. So the last thing I wanted to cover today and really ask you, the Trading Card Therapy audience, do you feel similar to me that when you were younger, you just loved oodles and oodles of cards? But as we get older, a little bit more mature, a little more wise, we hope that just the sheer volume to manage it all, it's just better to kind of trade up and kind of color up and get better cards, have fewer cards in your collection. And even though I love collecting, the whole thing is just easier to manage. Well, I would love to know what your thoughts are on that subject. And if you've been trending in that direction, and if so, will you maybe utilize the National this year, in Cleveland, to do even more of that, divesting of some of the lesser dollar cards in the bulk to try to get just maybe a few grails or, you know, a top 50 or a top 100 for your collection. I'm hearing more of people doing that in the hobby, myself included, and I'm curious if you folks are doing that as well. So the next thing that I wanted to cover is I'm about to go on a road trip. It's on the East Coast, so I'll be driving. And I've had probably hundreds of collections I've bought over the years. Many of them, you can see the video and the full story on my blog at blog.justcollect.com. And just like whether it be you're an avid tennis player like myself or you're an avid baseball player, lots of times you're still going to get the butterflies before you set foot on the tennis court or get into the batter's box. So I have a little less nerves than I used to. I experience a little bit less than I used to. But make no mistake, I prepare just as hard as ever. And I am a little bit nervous because it's a big deal. It's a big collection. It's one that's been in the same family for quite some time. And I would encourage you highly, if you are not going to tune in to any other episode of Trading Card Therapy, make sure you tune in to the one that we're going to do after I go out on the road late next week to see what I come back with. Make sure you follow me on Instagram, Leighton_Sheldon, or just_collect. Of course, we have our website and our blog that all can be found at justcollect.com, or go directly to the blog at blog.justcollect.com. But make no mistake, even though I believe we'll get it, and I'm praying to the hobby gods, of course I'm a little bit nervous. There could be a change of feeling. There could be a disagreement in what the values are. There's so many different things that could happen along the way. Make sure you tune in for my upcoming adventure. It's going to be a fun one. If you enjoyed today's episode of Trading Card Therapy, and you also enjoy hobby content like this, I encourage you to subscribe to my Just Collect YouTube channel. That's where I release all of the video episodes of Trading Card Therapy. And if you just want to listen to it on your favorite podcast network, like Apple, like Spotify, and some others, you could do that as well every week under Trading Card Therapy. And if you have enjoyed this, if you could leave a comment or feedback on that platform about our show, I would very much appreciate it. Until next week, this is the doctor signing off. Thanks so much for tuning in.